right, guys, welcome to another segment. In this segment, Dennis and I get a little nerdy. We talk about some MRI safety. As always, if you enjoyed the content, please like, comment, and subscribe to help grow the channel.
Starting with some MRI interesting things. Gage is going to kind of go in depth about some MRI information that maybe the normal folks were just not aware of, and so he's going to tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah. So what prompted it was I was mindlessly scrolling through Reddit, a couple week or so ago, and I saw an article about a guy that he was accompanying his mom for an MRI. She was getting the MR, he was just with her, and they let him come back, and he was carrying a gun, and the gun, because of it interacted with the magnet, it went off and killed him. And I know you and I have seen other stories about things as far as metal things, being brought near we can talk about those afterwards, but it got me thinking about like that the texts tell you these things like for a reason. Like they're not a fucking suggestion. Like this is, it's almost like the speed limit. People treat it as a suggestion, but then when you get pulled over, you're like, ooh, that's bullshit. No, it's law. Like,
Right.
it says right there. So I kind of wanted to go over this because I'm sure nobody knows about it before, unless they've had an MR and they've had this discussion with tech. But it's a very important thing, and it's something we get tested on as radiologists. And I'm about to take my certifying exam, so I have to study this stuff. So this is why it's fresh in my mind. But you'll know some of it. So the first thing is, I guess, is what is an MRI, right? I won't go into the details of like how it works, but the M in MRI means magnetic. So it's just a huge magnet. And the thing that people don't realize is how strong the magnet is. It extends outside of the room. So it's in a room. The magnet is in a room by itself, but the field extends. It's so strong, the field extends outside of the room. So if the tech has like a metal clip or badge or something, it could interact still with the scanner. So the first thing is to know that it's a huge magnet. It's a very strong magnet. I at one point learned it's X amount of times stronger than the Earth's magnetic field. I don't remember what the number is, but it's much stronger than Earth's magnetic field. So that's the first thing. The second thing is when you get an MRI, they give you a sheet, like a checklist sheet that you have to go through that says, do you have metal? You need to take that seriously because of the stories that we could talk about after we're done. But it will ask if you have tattoos, if you have metal, if you have pacemaker, all the stents, all this kind of stuff. So the first thing you need to do is take that seriously, fill that out seriously, because the most common, do you know what the most common issue is with magnets that people report? Like the most common adverse side effect?
Burns, maybe.
Yeah, so it's burns. People get burned because the magnet or the coils get so fucking hot. And people like me, you can't see them, but I have tattoos, and sometimes the ink has metallic fragments in it, and it will interact. So yes, burns is the most common thing, but take that seriously. So the third thing is you mentioned briefly the zones. So we'll talk about the zones because it comes into play when you go get your MR. So there are 4 zones for MR. One is essentially anything that's outside of the MR suite. So if you're in the hospital cafeteria, if you're in the ultrasound room, if you're in the 8th floor, that's all zone 1. And there's no restrictions. You can walk around with metal, with whatever you want. So that's where most people that work in the hospital spend their time, is zone 1. The first crucial zone is zone 2. And that's where they take you to fill out the sheet that I just mentioned. So it's the screening room is zone 2. So that's where you'll fill out the sheet. And then that's where the tech will tell you, hey, this is a big fucking magnet. If you have anything magnetic on you, leave it here right now. Like that's the whole point of zone 2, is to make sure you get the metal out of your body. So if you have anything magnetic on you, you leave it. If you have metal, like stents or anything inside of your body, they'll see that on the sheet and be like, okay, if you have metal, then they have to check, is it MR compatible? Is it not? Whatever. That's a different issue. But the big thing with zone 2 is that's where you get screened, and you should not go past zone 2 with any metal. So once you make it past zone 2, you've been screened.
So if I do have a stent, or if I have a pacemaker or something, will I even make it to zone 2?
Yeah, you'll make it to zone 2. Okay. Usually they ask us beforehand, or they'll do it themselves. They'll see the sheet, and if it says I have a pacemaker, hopefully the patient knows the model, like the type of pacemaker, and then there's a book like to look to see if this is Is it MR compatible, which means there are no issues? You can go get the scan. Is it functional, which means that it works with certain scanners, certain strengths, whatever? Or is it not compatible at all? If it's not compatible at all, then unfortunately you're done. And that's when they'll call us and be like, what test should we do now?
Right.
So once you do that, everybody with metal makes it to zone 2. Once you get checked through zone 2 by the tech, they've cleared your pacemaker, they've cleared everything. Then you go to zone 3, which is the MR suite itself. So that's where the control room is, like where the techs do their thing. That's what zone 3. And they don't have any metal on them. Like their badges can't have metal. Nothing can have metal. So once you make it to zone 3, you can't have metal. And then zone 4 is the actual magnet itself. So the zone 4 is just the magnet. So those are the 4 zones, but the biggest one is zone 2, I think, because you can't go past zone 2 with any. Like the whole point of zone 2 is to check to make sure you don't have metal, so you prevent a gunshot like this guy. You get to zone 3, the tech will you put your gown on. You put your gown on in zone 2. You go to zone 3. That's when the tech will then put you in the scanner, which is zone 4. But they do all of their work out in zone 3. So once you get to there, you should be good to go, right? If you have metal, they're going to find out. Like this guy that brought a gun in and was like,
yeah,
it went off. So, and I mentioned earlier that the magnet the field will extend past the room. So there's actually what they call a 5G line, which is to the point where if you walk past it, it can affect any metal you have in your body, right? So if you tell them you somehow they make it pass without a pacemaker, like without knowing that they have, if you walk past the 5G line, it will affect your pacemaker, and you're not even in the scanner yet. So that's why it's a huge issue. And if it affects the pacemaker, I mean, what happens? They're going to die, right? If the pacemaker shuts off, they go into arrhythmia, whatever. So that's why it's a huge issue with knowing if these people have metal.
Right.
I remember, and I think this is a concept that a lot of patients don't really understand. We had a patient one time that had, I think like some kind of congenital heart defect, and they had it fixed, and they were like 2. And we're like, well, can you get records? Because I think it was a she, whatever. They were older. So it was a long time ago. So we're like, MRI was fairly new. So this thing may not be MR compatible. Right. But you're like trying to explain to them that if you have metal, the magnet can move it, right? It can move the magnet, or it can move the metal in your body. It can heat it up. It can do a whole bunch of stuff. And yours is in the heart. So if it heats up, it will sear through. If it's in a vessel, it's going to go through the vessel, and you're going to bleed to death before you even know what happens.
Right.
If it moves it, it's going to rip the vessel. Same thing. And they just get pissed because they're like, they just don't understand. And I'm like, if you want to sign a waiver that says you get in this magnet and you could die, go for it. But unfortunately, that's not how it works. Right. So it's a huge deal. And then it's another big deal because another thing, I'm sure you've never even heard of it, but most people have never heard of, is when you have to quench the MRI, which is, so essentially the magnet is on 24/7. They never turn the magnet off. And if you have to quench it, quenching is essentially turning the magnet off. But it's a huge deal. It's very expensive. So this is where it gets kind of a little nerdy, I'll be frank with you. But so do you know how the MRI magnet, we said burns were the most common thing. Do you know how they cool the magnet?
I don't know. I've heard of quenching. I don't know how they cool.
So it's constantly being bathed in like liquid helium. So liquid helium is what cools the magnet, or the coils, to keep it from overheating. So if you quench that magnet, what happens is the coils essentially get super fucking hot. Super hot. So hot that it turns the liquid helium into gas. So gaseous helium. So then what happens is they have like a vent or something, some kind of conduction system where it will take the helium outside, right? So that's the whole point, is to get rid of the helium. Yeah. So the coils will overheat, turn the liquid into gas, and then the ventilation system, that's the word I was looking for, is supposed to take it out of the room. But that doesn't always work. So sometimes what happens is when it turns the liquid into gas, the gas will displace the oxygen. So if you're in that room and the helium turns into gas, you can suffocate to death.
Yeah.
So that's what they always recommend. If you have to quench, you have to leave. Everyone has to leave immediately. And you're not supposed to close the door because the pressure of the liquid helium will keep the door shut. So you can't even open the door. So if someone gets trapped in there when the door's shut and there's gaseous helium, they're dead, right? Because most MR suites you've seen they have like a glass between the scanner and the tech. So to equal out the pressure, you'd have to break through that glass, and then the helium would escape. So
at least they have the glass. I mean, I guess,
yeah,
it's
a huge deal.
Yeah.
There's like the MR tech and the doctor are like, they have to discuss like if quenching is necessary. There's only 2 scenarios that they teach us where quenching is like 100% necessary. Do you know what they are? Just by chance.
I'm guessing that it's like a patient or something is in there or something.
Yeah. So one of them is if either the staff or the patient gets trapped.
Yeah.
Right. So something gets sucked into the scanner and they're trapped between the scanner and whatever gets sucked in the room. The other one is a fire. If there's a fire, because if that helium gets lit on fire, it's toast.
Yeah, it's over. You know? It's over. Yeah.
So those are the 2. It's crazy because even if someone codes in the MR scanner, you don't quench the scanner. You get them out of the scanner as quickly, and then you do the code in zone 3. Yeah. So it's a huge deal. It's very expensive because then you have to replace that helium to use the scanner again.
Probably like $1 million or something.
It's very expensive.
Yeah.
So then you have hospital administration pissed off at you, because
it's a big call.
Usually they're not pissed off at us, right? Because it's the patient that lied. Like in the case of the gun, I know the tech asked, "Hey, do you have any metal?" And the dude just outright lied. So it's his fault. But
I wonder if there's a, should they have used like a metal? You have to go through a metal detector.
Yeah, they have a metal detector. So that's how they call it a wand, and it's not as strong as the MR magnet, but it's what we use if you have people that tell you they have metal somewhere in their body. Because a lot of times people will get X-rays and you're like, I can't fucking tell you if this is magnetic or not based off an X-ray. Yeah. So they'll run the wand over it, and if it reacts to the wand, whether it heats up or moves, or like sometimes you can see it stretch the skin, like you can see it want to start. And if it reacts to that wand, you don't put them in the scanner because the scanner will rip it out. So they do have a metal. It's not a.
I've heard of like people with like retainers, like they have permanent like metal retainers, and they'll go in the magnet.
And on the image, yeah.
I don't know if it's just is it just the retainers are so small that it doesn't pull. I mean,
likely they're not magnetic. So things have to be what's called ferromagnetic. So not just magnetic in general. So likely the retainers aren't ferromagnetic. They're just metal that might react to like a normal magnet, but it won't react to the MR scanner. But in that case, the retainers ruin the image, right? Because you can see it just a blur across the whole face because they have metal in their mouth.
Right.
But it's a huge deal. The whole point of this segment was to say that if the fucking tech tells you, hey, do you have metal on you? Like, this is it's truly life and death.
Right.
We mentioned the one guy that killed himself with the gun. I mentioned the funny one, not funny, but it was a sex toy, and the packaging said there's no metal in it. So he's like, oh, I don't know why you wear it to a MR scan to begin with. Fucking That's stupid. But the box said no metal, so I'm assuming he didn't tell them, or he or she, whatever, didn't tell them.
Yeah.
And got in the scanner, and turns out there was metal in that thing, and it won't respect boundaries. It destroyed his. I mean, through the colon, through the abdomen, everything. It will destroy you. So,
yeah. It's not something you mess with.
Stupid. People are just. It's like not. It's truly not a suggestion. Like if you want to die, take metal into the. And then I don't even know how it works legally. If you're the reason that we have to quench the scanner, then you at fault and you have to pay for something. Like I don't know how that works.
Right.
But the bottom line is just if you have metal anywhere, tell them.
Right. So, yeah. I mean. And I think they show whenever you like a new employee or something, they show you like the magnet's always on, different instances where they've taken wheelchairs or stretchers in there and, they didn't take MRI safe ones and they just pulled it right into the magnet and then they had to quench the magnet and turn it off so they can get the thing out of there. And
because if you don't, you're not getting that thing out. You're not going to be able to pull it away.
Right. And the stronger the larger the object, the stronger the pull, And
I mean, people like legitimately have died because they get trapped between
objects.
The gurney or whatever gets sucked in and you get trapped. Like you're going to die. It can suffocate you, do whatever. Maybe it causes fractures, whatever. Like there's a whole bunch of shit that can happen.
Yeah.
So
I think I saw like I think it was like, like 60,000, 100,000 times stronger than gravitational pull of the Earth.
There you go.
Like
See,
it's just
that's crazy, isn't it?
like,
Crazy.
like that's nuts. And what's crazy is that how many like MRI machines that we have all over the world, all over the and so we have these things that are that powerful all over the place.
And it's like I said, it extends outside of the room, which means up, out, so it can extend up to the floor above. So if your MR scanner is on the first floor, the field will extend to the second floor. So you can't have anything metal right above it, or it will. I mean, it'll just suck it down to the floor. But if it sucks it through the floor, that's a different story.
Right.
So,
man, yeah, that's crazy. I
think it's just an aspect people don't like. I don't know if they just think we're telling you this for the fuck of it, but like this is real life. That scenarios have happened that were 100% preventable.
Yeah, I don't even think that, and I didn't realize. Like I knew the different zones, but I didn't realize that how far it extends. If it extends out, if it's on the first floor, how far on the second floor does it extend, or does it,
Yeah, I mean, it'll depend on how strong the magnet is. If it's a 1.5 or a 3, I mean, some of these academic places have seven Tesla magnets. So it's it's crazy.
That's what I was saying. It said a 3T MRI scanner is around 60,000 times stronger than the entire Earth's magnetic field.
There you go, 60,000, which means a 7T is double that, more than double that. So, and they're working. I think they're working on like 10T scanners. There's just so many issues that can happen. Last episode about someone doing the full body MR and saying there was no radiation. Sure, there's no radiation. That's 100% true, but there are other issues, and radiation may kill you when you're 85. That MR magnet can kill you now.
Right.
So.
Yeah, it's a scary thing. It's important to listen to these.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. No radiation doesn't mean it's 100% safe. So I just thought this. We usually don't get this technical on the podcast, but I feel like it was an issue that we need to talk about because people. I feel like a lot of times don't take it seriously.
Right. Well, and in other aspects of radiology, the X-ray, ultrasound is myself, and X-ray or whatever. Like we're not as familiar with all these MRI different things. We go in the top of the barrel baseline details of their.
I mean, did they even check you? Like, I'm assuming you've taken a patient from ultrasound to MRI. Do they check you? Because you go into zone 3 if you take the patient straight there. If not, then you're at zone 2 and they don't need to check you. Have you ever been inside the suite with a patient?
No, I've never. The farthest I've ever gone with a patient is zone 2.
So you work in the hospital, and even you're not allowed in zone 3. The tech would have to. The only people that are allowed in zone 3 are the techs and us.
Right.
Unless you've been checked. Like if the tech checks you no matter what, then you can go. But you have to be zone 2, I think, is the most important because that's where you have to be screened. So if someone happens to waddle in through zone 2 without being screened, that's when shit can happen.
Right.
But
and I think there's tests too. Like you have to take the MRI test just to be able to, like you said, to be checked or whatever. Like I have to be signed off that I'm able to go around MRI. Which is
crazy.
Yeah, it is. I've had an MRI before. I've been an MRI.
We could get into an aside, but a lot of people think they're claustrophobic when they get an MR. And I'm like, this made me think. You don't watch Rick and Morty, but it made me think of his name's Mr. Poopy Butthole. I'm gonna put the clip in here when I put this on YouTube. He's like, oh, claustrophobic.
Gosh, it feels claustrophobic.
I mean, you're not claustrophobic. Like you can literally.
Right.
So when people say they're claustrophobic, or they want Valium or Xanax to get, I'm like, Jesus Christ, guys, like just get in the scanner.
Yeah.
So now, and we've talked about this a little bit. People that are claustrophobic have to get in the open scanner, which degrades the images. I had one the other day, and he had a knee, like a partial knee replacement, and he was claustrophobic and couldn't get in. And I was like, "Can we put him in the closed?" She's like, "No, he's claustrophobic," and it ruined the MR. He couldn't. He essentially got 3 or 4 sequences, and I said, "This is non-diagnostic." So, like, it's again, we're not like trying to shove you in the scanner against your will, but like those closed scanners are so much better than the open. So much better. I don't know what the equivalent is in ultrasound, but as far as image quality, but we're going to get nerdy again, but it's essentially the closed is uniform, right? Since it's closed, the signal is uniform throughout the whole thing. So your picture is much better. When you get in the open, it's obviously not uniform because part of it's open, but it's more about the picture, like how good the picture looks, which, you guys don't care about, but we do on the back end reading it. So
yeah.
All right, guys, that'll do it for another segment. As always, if you enjoyed the content, please like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.